The wind in 1882 Montana did not blow. It hunted. It came screaming down from the northern mountains like a living thing with teeth, swallowing the sky and burying the earth under a white rage. The plains disappeared. The trees bent low like they were begging for mercy. It was the kind of storm that erased men without leaving a mark behind. Luke Callahan had lived in Montana long enough to know the difference between a hard winter and a killing one. This was a killing one. The snow lashed against his face like sandpaper as he pushed Bess forward through drifts that reached her chest. His beard was crusted with ice. His wool coat was stiff with frost. He had already lost 3 calves that morning, frozen solid, standing as if they were still alive. The land always took something, but he had not expected it to try and take her. Bess stopped first. Her ears snapped back. She snorted and refused to move. Luke squinted through the storm. At first he saw nothing, just white chaos. Then a shape, a dark shadow buried in the drift. He slid from the saddle, snow swallowing him to the knees. His hand hovered near his revolver as he forced his way forward. It was a carriage, not the rough kind used by ranchers. This one was painted deep blue, trimmed with gold, meant for town roads and polished streets. It was shattered, one wheel gone. Wood splintered. A dead horse lay half buried nearby, legs stiff and reaching for the sky. Someone had crawled away. Well, Luke followed the faint drag marks through the snow. 20 steps later, he found her. She was face down, almost covered by the drift. Dark hair frozen to her cheek. Fine wool coat torn open. Silk stockings soaked and stiff with ice. She looked like she belonged in a ballroom, not dying in a Montana blizzard. He rolled her over. Her skin was blue. Her lips cracked. He tore off his mitten and pressed his fingers against her neck. Nothing. He pressed harder. There. A faint flutter. Alive. He did not think about who she was or why she was there. He just acted. He wrapped her in his coat and lifted her. She weighed almost nothing, like carrying a memory instead of a person. Getting her onto Bess was a fight. The horse did not like the limp weight or the smell of fear, but Luke forced it. He climbed up behind her and pulled her tight against his chest. He rode blind through the storm. Every step felt like the last. Yet when his cabin finally appeared through the white fury, it looked like a miracle carved from ice. He dragged her inside and slammed the door against the screaming wind. Silence fell heavy. He built the fire first. Flames roared to life, filling the cabin with heat and light. Only then did he turn back to her. He cut away her frozen boots, peeled off silk stockings, removed wet layers before the cold could finish what it started. He worked fast and careful, eyes turned away when needed, and he wrapped her in his only blankets and forced a few drops of whiskey past her lips. "Fight," he muttered. "You fight now." Hours passed. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, the fire held. Near dusk, her eyes opened. Gray, sharp, afraid. She jerked back from him, clutching the blankets to her chin. "Easy," Luke said, holding his hands open. "You're safe." "Where am I?" "My cabin." Her gaze swept the room, the rifle on the wall, the rough table, and the scarred man standing near the fire. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Luke Callahan." She hesitated before answering. "Anna." The lie was thin. Luke knew it, but he did not push. The storm trapped them for 3 days. 3 long days in a cabin meant for one man. She moved differently than anyone he had ever known. Every word careful, every gesture precise. Even drinking from a tin cup, like it was fine china. On the second night, she broke. Fever dreams spilled her secrets. Langley, she whispered in her sleep. Father's ranch. They'll take it. Luke stiffened. Langley was not just a ranch. It was the largest spread in the territory. An empire of cattle and land, stretching farther than most men could ride in a day. By morning, she told him part of the truth. Her real name was Victoria. Her father had died 2 months earlier. His foreman, Silas Morgan, had tried to force her to sign over the ranch when she refused, and he arranged the ambush that destroyed her carriage. He had meant for her to disappear in the storm. Luke listened in silence. Outside, the wind finally died. The world turned bright and deadly quiet. Then came the wolves, a whole pack, drawn by the scent of livestock. Luke went out to protect his mule and horse. Gunshots shattered the silence. He returned bleeding from a wolf bite, pale but standing. Victoria stitched his arm without trembling. Yet something shifted between them that night. Not fear, not gratitude. Something warmer. Something dangerous. The next morning, Luke rode to the ridge. He saw riders in the pass, 6 men. He found a leather tag in the snow. Morgan. They were coming. When he burst back into the cabin, Victoria saw the truth in his face. They found me, she whispered. Luke barred the door, loaded the rifles, handed her a revolver. They want you alive to sign papers, he said. Oh, that gives us time. Gunfire came at dusk. Luke killed 2 before they retreated. Morgan shouted promises of return, and he meant them. The next day, Luke made a choice. We're not hiding, he told her. We're going to your ranch. Victoria stared at him. To Langley? That's where this ends. She looked at the man who had pulled her from death without knowing her name or her wealth. He had saved a stranger. He did not know he had saved the richest woman in Montana. And now he was ready to fight for her land like it was his own. She nodded once. Then we go home. Their horses stepped into the bright, frozen world. Behind them, the small cabin stood alone in the white wilderness. Ahead waited a war neither of them could escape. And Morgan was already waiting at Langley Ranch. The ride to Langley Ranch felt longer than the storm. The sky was clear now, wide and blue, but the snow still lay deep across the valleys. Luke rode ahead, his wounded arm strapped tight against his chest. The wolf bite burned under the bandage. Fever tried to creep into his bones, but he ignored it. Victoria rode behind him on Bess, her hand steady on the reins. She did not look like a frightened girl anymore. She looked like someone who had decided something. They reached the high ridge by late afternoon. From there, the Langley Ranch spread out below them like a kingdom carved into white earth. The main house stood large and strong, a stone chimney, wide porch, barns and bunkhouses scattered across the valley floor. But something was wrong. No smoke from the bunkhouse, no cattle in the lower pens. Only one thin line of smoke from the main house. They're inside, Luke said quietly. Victoria's jaw tightened. That is my father's house. Luke studied the tracks in the snow through narrowed eyes. 6 horses had come in. Only 4 had left the night before from his cabin. Morgan had gathered more men. Luke slid off his horse slowly. We don't ride in. They'll be watching the main trail. He led them into a stand of aspens and hid the horses. A small line cabin sat a short distance from the main buildings, half buried in snow. You wait there, he told her. Bar the door. Don't come out. Victoria did not argue, but her eyes followed him as he slipped into the shadows of the ranch she had grown up on. Luke moved carefully. He knew ranch layouts, knew where men stood guard, and knew where light spilled from windows. Voices drifted from the main house. Laughter, the clink of glass. Morgan's voice rose above the others. "She's dead," Morgan said. "Storm took her. I told you. The ranch is mine once the papers are signed." "And if she ain't?" another man asked. Morgan laughed. "Then we finish it proper." Luke's hand tightened around his revolver. Morgan had already forged papers. Already decided Victoria was a ghost. Luke started to move back toward the cabin. He needed to tell her, needed to make a plan. Then a sound behind him froze his blood. Crunch of snow. He spun. Victoria stood there, rifle in her hands. Her face was pale, but steady. "He is in my father's house," she said. "Get back," Luke whispered harshly. "Oh, you'll get yourself killed. I have been running since the carriage," she said. "I will not run on my own land." Before he could grab her, she stepped into the open yard. "Silas Morgan!" she shouted. The laughter inside stopped. The front door swung open. Morgan stepped onto the porch. He was broad, heavy, with a thick beard and cold eyes. For a moment he looked confused. Then he smiled. "Well," he said slowly, looks like the storm didn't finish you." Victoria stood at the bottom of the steps. "I am Victoria Langley," she said clearly. "This ranch belongs to me." Morgan's smile widened. "You should have stayed buried." Luke moved up behind her, revolver low at his side. Morgan's eyes flicked to him. "So that's the gunman," he said. "You're still breathing, Callahan." Luke did not answer. Morgan raised his rifle slightly. "This ain't your fight." "She's not alone," Luke said. But Morgan's men appeared behind him. 4 of them. Armed. Victoria lifted the rifle Luke had given her. Her hands did not shake. Morgan laughed again. "You won't shoot," he said. "You don't have the stomach." Silence fell over the yard. Snow drifted in thin curls across the ground. Morgan raised his rifle fully. Luke saw it first. He fired. The shot cracked across the valley. One of Morgan's men dropped. Gunfire exploded from the porch. Victoria ducked. Luke pulled her behind a trough and fired again. 2 more shots from the house tore into the wood beside them. Victoria crawled to the edge and aimed. She remembered her father's voice. "Squeeze. Do not pull." She squeezed. A man on the porch stumbled backward and fell. Morgan cursed and charged forward, firing wildly. A bullet struck Luke in the shoulder, the same side as the wolf bite. He staggered, but stayed on his feet. Victoria saw him sway. "Luke!" she cried. But Morgan rushed down the steps. He tackled Luke hard. They hit the snow together. Luke's revolver flew from his hand. Morgan's weight pinned him. "You think you can steal my ranch?" Morgan snarled at Victoria. Luke struggled, blood soaking into the snow beneath him. Morgan raised his revolver toward Luke's head. Victoria did not think. She ran forward. She grabbed the fallen revolver from the snow. Morgan's finger tightened. Victoria fired first. The sound was deafening, but Morgan froze. His eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest as red spread across his coat. Then he fell backward into the snow. Still, the yard went silent. The last of Morgan's men ran. They did not look back. Victoria stood there shaking, the revolver heavy in her hand. Luke lay on the ground, pale and bleeding. She dropped beside him. His eyes were open. "You got him," he whispered. She pressed her hand against his wound. "You do not get to die," she said fiercely. But he tried to smile. "Told you. Your turn." She dragged him inside the house, inside her father's house. Blood marked the floor. She found clean cloth, whiskey, anything she could use. She worked fast. The wolf bite was swollen and dark. The bullet wound bled heavily. She stitched him again, hands steady, eyes dry. Hours passed. When she finally finished, she sank beside the sofa where he lay. The ranch was quiet. Morgan was dead. The land was hers again. But victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like survival. Luke opened his eyes near midnight. "You should have run," he said weakly. She leaned close. "If I ran," she whispered, "there would be nothing left worth keeping." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as the girl from the snow, not as the heiress, but as a fighter. Outside, the wind moved softly across the valley. Inside, 2 survivors lay in the wreckage of war, and for the first time since the storm began, the land was quiet. Spring did not come gently to Montana. It broke the land open. The ice on the river cracked with loud thunder. Snow pulled back in dirty waves, revealing black earth and broken fence lines beneath. The world smelled of mud and meltwater, and something new trying to grow. Victoria Langley stood on the porch of her father's house and watched it all return. The ranch was scarred. Bullet holes marked the porch rails. One barn still leaned from fire damage, but it was standing, and so was she. Inside, Luke Callahan lay near the window where the sun could reach him. His right shoulder was shattered from Morgan's last shot. The wolf bite had nearly taken his arm. For 10 days he drifted in and out of fever, caught between this world and the next. Victoria did not leave his side. She forced broth between his lips, changed bandages, held his hand. When the nightmares came, when he finally woke fully, it was morning. The valley glowed gold. He stared at the ceiling a long time before speaking. "You should have let me die," he said quietly. Victoria did not look up from the ledger book in her lap. "No. That ranch is worth more than me." She closed the book. "The ranch is land," she said. "You are not land." He turned his head toward her. "You don't even know what I am." "I know exactly what you are," she replied. He looked away. "I killed Abe Selby," he said. "Your father's foreman." Morgan didn't lie about that. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The pastures stretched wide and empty below. "My father trusted Abe," she said slowly. "But my father also trusted Morgan. He did not always see clearly." Luke's jaw tightened. It was a fair draw. He went for his gun first, but I was faster. "And you ran," she said. "Yes." He did not hide from it. "I ran for 10 years from that saloon from Kansas. From my own name." Silence settled between them. Victoria turned back to him. "You did not run from me." He met her eyes. "I tried." She walked to the side of his bed. "You stayed," she said softly. "You fought for me. You nearly died for me." His voice grew rough. "I brought blood to your doorstep." "You brought justice," she answered. Outside, the ranch hands began to return. Word had spread that Morgan was dead, and the Langley girl had taken back the land. Old men who had worked under Arthur Langley rode in one by one. A cook named Jeremiah, a quiet foreman named Silas Brown, who had been pushed out by Morgan. Young cowboys looking for honest wages. Victoria stood on the porch and spoke to them. "My father built this ranch," she said. "Morgan tried to steal it. We will build it back stronger. Fair wages, fair work, no lies." The men nodded. They saw something in her that day. Not just a rich girl from the East, but a leader. And the ranch came alive again. Fences were rebuilt. Cattle were brought in from winter survivors. The forge burned day and night. And Luke watched. He could not rope. He could not draw a gun anymore. His right arm would never be what it was. He walked stiffly now, favoring the shoulder that still ached with every breath. One evening, near the end of summer, he stood in the barn saddling Bess. His old saddlebag lay packed at his feet. Victoria stepped into the doorway. You are leaving," she said. It was not a question. Luke did not turn. "I don't belong here." She stepped closer. "This is your home." He shook his head. "I am a gunman with a ruined arm. I am the man who killed your father's foreman. I am the reason Morgan hated this place enough to come back strong." She walked until she stood beside him. "You are also the man who pulled me from a snowdrift," she said. "The man who fought wolves for a mule. The man who stood in front of me when bullets were flying." He stared at the ground. "I don't fit in your world." She reached out and took his damaged right hand gently. He tried to pull away. She held on. She lifted his hand and pressed it over her heart. "You feel that?" she asked. He did. Strong, steady, alive. "You were my anchor in the storm," she said. Now it is your turn to stay." His breath broke. "I am broken," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "Good. So am I." He looked at her. No hesitation, no doubt, just truth. He let the saddle strap fall from his hand. And he stayed. Months later, the ranch was thriving again. The hills turned gold under a wide autumn sky. Victoria rode beside Luke through the high pasture. His right arm rested in a leather sling, but his left hand held the reins steady. He was not the fastest rider anymore, but he was there. She looked at him. "You did not know who I was when you saved me," she said. He smiled slightly. "I didn't need to." "You saved the richest woman in the territory," she teased. He shook his head. "I saved a woman freezing in the snow." She guided her horse closer until their knees touched. "And I saved a man who thought he did not deserve a home." They rode in silence for a long moment. Wind moved through the tall grass. Cattle grazed peacefully below. The land was theirs, not because of wealth, not because of law, but because they had fought for it together. And this time, neither of them ran.